Okay, so you've seen the headlines, right? The hashtags, the whole Save the Bees movement. And the story we've all come to know is that the honeybee is basically on the brink of extinction. But what if that story, the one we all kind of take for granted, isn't really the whole story? Well, today we're going to play detective and find out what the science actually says is going on inside that hive. I love this quote from Bertrand Russell. It's the perfect way to kick things off. Just because an idea is popular doesn't mean it's right. And when it comes to the great bee mystery, this is exactly the mindset we need. We've got to push past the popular narratives, past the easy answers, and really follow the evidence wherever it leads. So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle that whole bee apocalypse idea head on. Then we'll line up the usual suspects, all the things we hear blamed for bee deaths. After that, we're going to uncover a tiny but absolutely devastating culprit that changed the game. Then we'll see how beekeepers themselves have turned into scientists to fight back. And finally, we'll zoom out to see what this all tells us about the bigger picture. All right, part one of our investigation. Let's get right to the biggest question. Are honeybees actually going extinct? I think the answer is probably going to surprise you. So this is the chart. This is the one you always see, and honestly, it's terrifying. It shows this steep, nonstop drop in honeybee colonies in the US. You look at a graph like this and you think, wow, we are just a few years away from zero. But here's the thing. This is a classic case of only showing part of the data. But look what happens when we zoom out. The story changes completely. You see, the number of honeybee colonies has always been driven by economics, not just ecology. That massive spike? That was World War II. The government was actually encouraging beekeeping because beeswax was a key ingredient in munitions. After the war, honey got cheap, beekeeping wasn't as profitable, and so the number of colonies went down for decades. And that little uptick you see recently, that's thanks to high prices for honey and, get this, the massive business of almond pollination. The point is, the honeybee is managed livestock, kind of like cattle, and its population numbers go up and down with the market. Okay, so if the honeybees aren't on a one-way trip to extinction, why are we still hearing about beekeepers losing so many of their hives every year? It's a real problem. So let's investigate the usual suspects. These are the bad guys you hear about all the time, right? Pesticides, GMOs, cell phone towers. And listen, some of these things definitely don't help. But the real problem is when people pick one of them and decide it's the single cause. Researchers have a term for this. They call it faith-based reasoning. It's where you pick your bogeyman first, and then you go looking for evidence to back it up. But the real smoking gun in this mystery, it's something much, much smaller. And this brings us to the big twist in our story. In the late 1980s, a tiny little invader showed up in the US and completely changed the rules of the game for beekeeping all over the world. So think about it like this. Before this thing called the Varroa mite arrived, viruses in a beehive were kind of like the common cold. Yeah, they were there, but a healthy hive could totally handle them. No big deal. But after Varroa showed up, everything changed. See, this mite isn't just a parasite that feeds on bees. It's a vector. It's basically a tiny, dirty hypodermic needle that goes from bee to bee, injecting viruses directly into their system, completely bypassing their immune defenses. And it turns those once minor viruses into absolute colony-killing plagues. And this is the key to the whole mystery. Scientists call it the Varroa virus complex. It's not just the mite, it's not just the viruses, it's the deadly 1-2 punch of them working together that is the #1 reason for the massive colony losses we've been seeing for decades. So, how in the world do you fight an enemy you can barely even see? Well, this is where the story gets really cool because it shifts from the problem to the solution. Beekeepers have had to become frontline scientists. They've learned to use simple but super effective tools to defend their colonies. They've basically become bee detectives. So how do they do it? I mean, how do you get solid data from inside a buzzing hive with tens of thousands of bees? You're probably picturing some high-tech lab equipment, but the real answer is way more clever and incredibly down-to-earth. It's called an alcohol wash. A beekeeper scoops up a very specific sample, about half a cup, which is roughly 300 bees, into a jar of rubbing alcohol. And get this, a lot of them use these brilliant DIY mite shaker jars made from 2 peanut butter jars screwed together. Then they just shake it like crazy for a minute, and that makes all the little Varroa mites fall off of the bees and sink to the bottom. It's simple, it's fast, and it gives them an incredibly accurate picture of what's going on. Then comes the simple bit of math that can literally save a colony. You just count the mites you see, Divide by 300, and bam, you have your infestation percentage. In this case, 16 mites in a sample of 300 bees is a 5.3% infestation rate. That one number is a total game changer. It turns the beekeeper from someone who's just guessing and worrying into a strategist. It tells them exactly if and when they need to step in and treat the hive. It's real citizen science in action. Now, controlling mites is absolutely 100% critical, but it's not the end of the story. So for our last step, let's zoom out one more time, because the health of a single beehive is really a mirror reflecting the health of our entire agricultural landscape. You see, there are all these other underlying stressors that weaken bee colonies, and that makes them way more vulnerable to that Varroa virus complex we talked about. We're losing millions of acres of wildflowers and natural bee food. Instead, bees are often stuck in these huge monocultures, just miles and miles of corn or soy, which for them is like trying to live on a diet of nothing but crackers. Then you add in a constant, low-level exposure to a whole cocktail of different pesticides, plus the stress of being loaded onto trucks and driven across the country. All of it just wears down their immune systems, giving the mites and viruses a huge advantage. So here's the final takeaway. This isn't just about honeybees. Honeybees are what scientists call a bioindicator. Their health tells us about the health of the entire environment. They are, quite literally, the canary in our agricultural coal mine. Their struggles, from the parasites to the poor nutrition to the chemical exposures, are a direct reflection of the health of the very food system that we all depend on. So the question we really need to be asking isn't just how do we save the bees? It's how do we build a healthier, more resilient agricultural system for all of us?